Welcome to Highline Chemistry Excel video. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on the link below the video. Hey, we got a great video here, and we have 1, 2, 3 topics. Here are all of the Excel topics that we will cover. Let's go ahead and start by going over to Sheet 1, Charting. Now here's our data. I actually have some notes up here. Here's the Excel topics we'll cover in this particular video, and here's the XY scatter details that we'll cover in this video. Oh, check this out. We are given a data set, and this is actually a picture I put here in Excel. You'll get it on a piece of paper, but we have to enter this data and the labels at the tops into the cells. Now, it's very important that we put the X and then the Y. So the X has to be on the left in order for the charting engine to plot the XY scatter plot. All right, let's come over here and enter our labels. I've already put X horizontal independent variable and then Y vertical dependent variable. Now, you in this chemistry class already has a prerequisite for algebra, so you should know that. All right, let's put our labels. Now, I actually want to get a little tricky here. I want to put that little degree symbol. And in order for that, we have to go up to our insert ribbon. In fact, we're going to use our ribbons here a lot. I have mine collapsed. You can uncollapse them to expose them by pointing to any one of them, right-click, and unchecking Collapse Ribbon. Let's go over to Insert, and now check this out. All the way over on the right is Symbol. And you can hunt through where your Calibri and find this little symbol right here. I'm going to go ahead and double-click it. I can see that it's been inserted there, and then click Close. There's a bunch of different types of little zeros like that you could use for degrees. So that's going to be our temperature Celsius, tab, and now I'm going to do density. Notice in both cases, it's very important to put our units. Now, in some cases, you might want to make these two columns less wide and add word wrap. Now, I'm going to keep my columns this wide here, but I would like the Celsius to be below the temperature and these grams per milliliter to be below density. So instead of using the home ribbon word wrap, which automatically does it, you can see that little picture there, I'm going to do it manually because right now the column is too wide. Watch this. If I put my cursor exactly where I want to drop it down to the next level, I can do Alt Enter, and that's a manual word wrap in Excel. So now when I hit Enter, it is on the next line. I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. Get my cursor right there, Alt Enter. Now, it'd be nice to center all these. I'm going to highlight all of them, and I'm going to go up to the Home ribbon, Alignment, and I'm going to click this Center. This does it horizontally. If you wanted to do it vertically, we don't need that here. You could do that one there. Now, actually, I'd like to add some formatting to this. So I'm also going to come up to the Borders and point to All Borders. Then I'm going to do some fill. Let's get fancy here. Fill. This is called Stylistic Formatting. I'm going to click the drop down, and you can pick from your colors here. You can also go down to more colors if you don't like what you see. I'm going to pick this blue right here. Boom. Wait a second. I can't see the text, so now I'm going to go up to the letter A and add some font color white. All right, now let's enter our data. That's called stylistic formatting, by the way. Now let's look at our numbers over here. 0.0, 4.0. Let's go ahead and see if we can enter that 0.0 into our first cell. 0.0, enter. What? Hey, Excel's not letting me do that. We're going to have to learn about something called number formatting. Now, before we learn how to do this number formatting, I'm just going to enter the numbers. And I'm actually going to use the number pad to do this. 4, enter. 8, enter. 12, enter. 16, enter. 20, enter. 24, enter. 28, enter. Now, I've entered the numbers, and notice we need 0.0. I'm going to highlight all of them using my selection cursor. And now we're going to go up to the number group in the Home ribbon. And there's all sorts of great number formatting. The ones we're going to use are increase and decrease decimals. So all I'm going to do is increase. Click it once. just like that. Now, let's go ahead and look at this one here. It looks like there's 4 characters in the cell, right? 4.0, that's 4 characters. But look up at the formula bar. You can see Excel actually is only storing a single character, the number 4. Now, actually, I have my formula bar too big here. You can point and click and drag. We don't need it that big. All right, now let's enter our second column of numbers. These are the y values. And let's learn something strange about this. When we enter decimals, we do not have to type that lead 0. Type point and then the number 999841. Now watch this. When I hit enter, it'll automatically add that 0. All right, I'm going to type the rest. All right, so I've entered that column of numbers. Now I'm going to highlight all of these with my selection cursor and add some borders. Let's make it look good. All right, so we've entered our labels. We saw how to do word wrap. We learned a little bit about number formatting, and we also did some stylistic formatting. Now we can do our chart. Now these up here, I'm actually going to highlight 1, 2, 3 cells there and add a different color, just so I know. When I highlight this, I don't want to highlight those. I want just label at the top of our X's and label at the top of our Y's. All right, so you ready? I'm going to highlight, and now we're going to do our charting. Insert. In the chart group, there's all sorts of groovy charts. Now, here's the big caveat. We're using Excel 2013 for this video. Highline computers all by default have Excel 2013. The charting engine in Excel 2013, Office 2013, is totally different than earlier versions. So if you're trying to use an earlier version, it's totally different. All right, ready? We're actually going to use a scatter plot. So I'm going to click the drop down here. And what we want, since this is collected data, sample data, and we want to see if the X and Y has some sort of relationship, we use the scatter plot. We don't want to use any of these lines down here. We want the dot, dot, dot one, the scatter one. So boop. And instantly, we have a starter chart. Now, there's a bunch of things we need to improve. Foremost, we have no idea what these numbers mean, the X and the Y. Always important, you got to add labels. Now, this is 2013. We used to have to go up to the charting tools, and there's still a few things up in format and design, but they brought a lot of the features we need to create our charts right close to the charts in 2013. So we click our plus, and sure enough, what we want is axis titles. We'll come back to this in a second and talk about trend line, but let's just talk about axis title. It already has a chart title and grid lines by default. Now, look at this. That's not a very good title. We'll change that in a second. But let's come down here. Now, there's 2 ways we can do this. One way is that we can click and start typing, and that's what we'll do up here. But I want you to notice these 2 labels here really should be our labels and units from over here. Now, we've already entered these in the cells. So check this out. Here's a great trick. We can link this axis title. This is the X value, right? So we want to link it to that cell. Watch. There's a solid line. If you accidentally click inside and there's a dotted line, this won't work. You want to make sure, boop, it's solid. Then you come up to the formula bar, and you want to say, hey, label, I want you, see that flashing cursor? You say, I want you to equal, so you type an equal sign, and then click on the cell. Now, actually, the next couple of videos will talk about formulas. This is a type of formula, but it's linking the label to the cell. Now, notice the formula is pretty polite. It says, hey, I'm on the sheet 1 charting, and I'm using the cell reference A30. Once you hit Enter, boom, we have our label. Now let's go ahead and do that over here. Click on the label. Make sure that it is solid line. Click in the formula bar, type an equal sign, and now click on your Y label, Enter. Now we clearly have a label on our Y and X. Now actually, I don't think I like that turned sideways. If these did not have manual word wrap, this would not have happened. I like it there. But you know what? I'm going to turn this label on its side. Now, how do we do that? You can actually click on any element in the chart, and there's a few ways we can open up the task pane to further format it. You can right-click, Format. Now, notice it says Format Axis Title. If I were on the title here and right-click, it says Format Chart Title. Here, right-click, it says Format Axis. So any element in the chart, you can right-click and format whatever it is. It'll open up this task pane. Another way to do it is to use the keyboard Control-1. That opens up any task pane for any one of the objects. Now, this is one thing that is totally different than earlier versions. In earlier versions, we had dialog boxes. In 2013, we have these task panes. And in my opinion, they get a little bit confusing. But if you keep clicking through them, notice we have a number of different places we can go. And we have two options up here. I'm going to go to Text Options, right? Oh, and there's a bunch of things here. You just click through and read them until you get the one you want. We want Text Box. It says Text Box, and we have Text Direction. Man, that is really buried just to turn that thing on its side. Nevertheless, we click this, and now we have a choice. I'm going to say horizontal. I like that much better. Now, we can leave this open or close this. When we format other elements, this will come up. So I'm going to go ahead and close it. Now, let's click up on the title. We want a title here. This is the second way. These labels are linked. This one's not going to be. As long as you see the solid outline, we can use the ghost method of entering text. I'm just going to start typing relationship. Now notice as I typed, it appeared up in the formula bar, which is kind of strange. Normally when we enter stuff in Word or Excel, it appears where we had our selection cursor, right? But it's appearing up here. It won't appear down here until we hit Enter, right? And now we can see we have our chart label. Now, whether or not you leave the grid lines is up to you. If you don't like the grid lines, you can click on them and then hit Delete. You can also go up to Format. And up in the Format ribbon all the way over in Current Selection, you can use a drop-down. Sometimes it's hard to select the items here. You have the choice of selecting anything you want here. So Access Major Grid Lines, there you'd go. Now I'm going to leave them here, but the way I like to do it if I delete them is to hit the Delete key and then highlight the thing and hit Delete key. Now, I'm going to go ahead and bring those back. We could go up to and I have my quat totally different. Yours is usually at the top, and there's a go back and go forward button for undo. I'm going to use the keyboard Control-Z and then Control-Z. That's the keyboard for undo. All right, because I'm going to keep them there. All right, so it's looking pretty good. One thing we do want to fix here is the decimals here. It doesn't look like it's pulling the formatting from there. So we're going to click on this axis. And remember, we have two choices, right-click Format Axis, or we can use the keyboard Control-1. And up pops our task pane. And we have to choose which one of these icons to use to format. I'm going to click on the series. Oh, look at this. I don't even see it. I'm scrolling all the way down. This is really buried. To tell you the truth, it was easier in earlier versions. I'm going to click the drop-down for number formatting. Oh, my heavens. And now I'm going to use the drop-down, and I'm going to select number. And here I have a choice. I'm going to uncheck. Let's scroll down a little bit. Number format. I'm going to uncheck Use Separator. It wouldn't have any effect if we left it there. And I'm going to type 4, Enter. And sure enough, we can see. So there we go. Now we can click Close. We have two labels that say what the numbers are in each one of the axes. We have a title. We have our grid lines. And we have our plot point. Now, what does this mean? If we scroll over, we can see we have an x and a y. Well, let's just take this value right here, 16.98943. Scatter plot shows the relationship between these two numbers. We go out to 16, which is right about here, and then we go up that amount. So the actual two numbers determine out, or either direction for the x and either direction for the y. Ours happen to be positive, so we go to 16 and up to 0.998943. Now, is there a relationship between these? And what that means is, what's happening? Well, as we go this direction on the x-axis, it means we're increasing the x. What's happening to the y? Right here, 0, it's right there. Then 5, then 10, then 15, then 20. What's happening as we increase our x to the y? Well, guess what? It looks like it's decreasing. This is called an inverse relationship. If we had a direct or positive relationship, it would be this direction, meaning as x increases, y increases. So our relationship is as x increases, which means temperature, the density seems to be decreasing. Now, in your stats class, which I don't think is required for this class, you would learn how to create a linear equation and plot r squared. Luckily, in the charting engine, it'll do it for you automatically. Check this out. We can come over, and there's a few ways we can do this. I'm going to right-click one of the points. There's our right-click menu, and down here it says Add Trend Line. Another way to do it is simply to come over to the plus and say Trend Line. I don't know. I'm a right-clicker in this guard. I already had my hand on the mouse, so right-click, Add Trend Line. Now, it opens up our task pane here. And there's a few options we want to look at. It's linear. That's what's required for this project here. So we're going to scroll down. And look at this. It says Display Equation on Chart. I didn't even have to do the heavy lifting to calculate the slope and the intercept. And if I click back on here, notice depending on any object, your task pane changes. So I'm going to click boop, back over there. We want to add one more thing, r squared. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move this. Oh, except for there's not quite enough room over there. I'm going to do something to this actual text box here. I'm going to come over to fill, and now I'm going to say solid. Now, I don't want it to be that color. I just don't want to see those lines in the background. So now I'm going to come down here and say white. And so now I have my y equals mx plus b and our r squared. Hey, that's pretty cool. We want to do one last thing. Now, do want to see how to move this chart. I'm going to use the horizontal arrow, and now I'm going to close this task pane. And I'd like to resize this. So I'm going to point to the very edge and resize it till it's just kind of almost the same size as this data set over here. And now I'd like to do some page setup because we're going to have to print this out. Now notice Control P, or File, Print. Control P in 2010 and 2013 has combined the print dialog box and print preview. No more printing it out, looking at it, and seeing that it got the wrong thing. Notice it's got all this extra stuff up here, and I don't want it. I just want the data and the chart to print. So I'm going to click Escape, and I'm going to go to Page Layout. Now, we could use this ribbon, but there's a nice one-stop shopping page setup. Right here, this is called a dialog launcher. Boop, and this opens up the dialog launcher. Now, guess what? I have two things, and it looks like this is wider than it is tall, so I want landscape. I'm going to go to the Margins tab. Horizontally centering this will look good. Header and footer. This is not necessary, but guess what? Wouldn't it be nice to have your name and the chemistry class name on it? We could use a header. There's a preview up there. There's nothing. We could use a footer. There's a preview right here. There's nothing. I'm going to go ahead and actually look at the drop down to see if there's anything interesting. Now, page 1 of question mark just means it'll print out however many pages there are, 1 of 10, 2 of 10. We only have 1, so it's going to print out 1 of 1. Now I'm going to go further modify this custom footer. And no way, in the left section, I'm going to type your name. Now, where it says your name, I want you to put your name. And then over here, we'll put something like Chemistry 161. All right, you ready? Click OK. Now, notice this is a dialog box within a dialog box. So when I click OK, I jump back to page setup. Now, let's go to the last tab here, sheet, and we want to set the print area. Now, check this out. This is a little collapse button. Anytime you see one of those, it means you can take your cursor and highlight cells over in the spreadsheet. Now, I'm going to highlight all the way down to here. Now, I can already see a problem. You see how the green moving ants are a little bit shorter than our chart, so we'll have to come and fix that chart in just a second. I'm going to click OK, and that's all of our page setup. Now, I do want to click on the chart and just scoot it in just a little bit so it's past that set print area. Now, check this out when we Control P. Oh, that's not it. Escape. That's because we had the actual chart highlighted, and actually the printing engine is polite. It thought we wanted to print just that. I'm going to click outside. Now, when we Control P, there we go. Now, actually, I'd like to increase this a little bit. Notice there's a page setup. We can get directly to page setup. And right here on adjust, I'm just going to guess here. I'm going to say maybe 115% up. Click OK. And sure enough, that's looking good. Now you can click print. I'm going to click escape. All of that print stuff is saved with the workbook. All right, we saw how to enter data, do a little stylistic and number formatting, how to create a scatter plot, add a trend line, equation R-square, and even how to do some page setup. Now, we want to learn how to calculate the slope of the linear equation and the y-intercept. Why? You know, it's really convenient that this charting engine can pop these numbers out. But what if you need to use them to make some prediction or use them in a calculation? So now we're going to go over to another sheet. And by the way, each one of the sheets has an answer, right? So we're going to go to this sheet here and see how to create formulas. This red one over here is the same. In fact, I'm going to boop, boop. So it's the same. With the AN means it has the answer. The one that doesn't say AN, that's the one you want to work on. So I'm going to click on this formulas for linear equation. Now we want to talk about the slope and the intercept. Actually, if we go back and look right here, here is the line. And we want a mathematical equation that describes this linear line here. Notice that it's downward. So as x increases, y is decreasing. And you can see up here that the slope is negative. So we want to calculate that, and then the y-intercept. All right, so the slope. Rise over run. Maybe you'll remember that from your algebra class. A great way to think of it, though, is for every 1 unit of x, how much does y move? Now, again, in a stats class, you'd have to do this longhand, and it's pretty complicated to calculate, but check this out. There's a function in Excel that'll calculate it for us. And it will plop the number right into the cell, and then we can use it in other equations or formulas. All right, you ready? Now, this may be the first formula for some of you. You always type an equal sign. Remember, when we were over here, we were just typing stuff, numbers or text. We just typed it. But if you want to tell Excel that you're doing a formula, you have to type an equal sign first. Now, there's built-in functions that'll do the heavy lifting. And what do you think Microsoft named the slope calculation? So there's a built-in function. It's called, that's right, slope. Now, when you start typing in 2010 and later Excel, a little drop down will pop up. And right now, the only two functions that start with SL is SLN and slope. And slope is the one we want. Now, I can type an O, and all that's left is slope. I can either keep typing it and then type an open parentheses, or now I can hit Tab. And just like that, I have my slope function. And this is what's so cool about it. This screen tip is prompting you. Now notice one of the two arguments or prompts is bold. That means what you have to enter into the formula. So I'm going to take my cursor and highlight the y values. Notice the dancing ants are dancing or marching, this means it's editable. If I accidentally highlighted the wrong cells, notice how as long as the dancing ants are still dancing or marching, you can go ahead and redirect it. Now I want to make sure that I get just the Ys. Once I'm making sure that the dancing ants are around the right place, then I come over and I'm looking at my screen tip. It's bold. In order to jump to the next argument, it's showing you have to type a comma. So I'm going to type comma, and watch this. The screen tip, boop, now the known x's is bold. So now I highlight boop, dancing ants around the correct number of x values from the cells. Notice A16, A13, B6 to B13. Now I type a close parentheses and enter. Now check that out. This gives us an even more precise value. It's negative 0.00013. If we were to go back over to our charting, notice it truncated it right there, minus 0.00, well, 3 zeros and a 1. So now, let's go back over here. We have our slope. Now we calculate our intercept. Those are the two calculated values we need to then mix with an x value to make a prediction. So what do you think the name of the intercept function is? That's right, it's intercept. Hey, we type an equal sign. That tells Excel I'm about to do a formula. And then INTE. And now I'm left with intercept. I'm going to hit the tab key. That way I don't have to type those last few letters or the open parentheses. Now, many of the statistical linear algebra functions have the same arguments, known y's, known x's. Now, there's a few of them that are not as polite. It says known y, so we're not going to make a mistake. Some of them say array 1, array 2. But you want to always put the y's in first. So dancing ants are around the correct range. So I type a comma, jump to the next argument. There's my x values, close parentheses, and enter. Is that totally amazing? Now, we could put any x value here. Remember, we're trying to build an equation that we can use for predicting. So I'm going to type 25.5 degrees Celsius. Now we have everything we need. Slope, intercept, and x to put into our linear equation. Now, remember, y equals mx plus b. There it is right there. Or predicted y equals mx plus b. So equal sign, and we click on the slope, which is the m. And unlike algebra on paper, where you can just put two variables next to each other, or a dot, or a multiplication symbol, in Excel you have to use the asterisk. I'm going to use the asterisk on the number pad. And now I'm going to get my x, and then plus b. And there it is. That's my little equation I can use. Enter. And there's the answer from our model. So our linear model, we put an x of 25.5 degrees Celsius. And our model estimates that the density will be 0.997219. Now, we can put whatever value we want here, 35.75, enter. And there our model predicts that density. Now, you got to be careful. These are the original values we collected, right? This model is just an estimate. If we were to put an exact value, 8, in here, it's going to give us something different unless the actual original data point happened to lie exactly on our estimated linear equation. All right, so I'm going to put 25.5, enter. That is absolutely beautiful. Now here, what we did is we have a single cell and a single x. A lot of times you want to make predictions for a bunch of x's. So here, watch this. I'm going to actually copy these labels, Control-C for copy, and then click in A16 and Control-V for paste. And now I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to start at 0. So I'm going to type 0, enter 1, enter. And I'd like to just go from 0 all the way to 40. So watch this. You can establish a pattern that Excel will recognize. And now, this is selected cells. And down in the corner is that little green dot. That's called the fill handle. This cursor right here is called the selection cursor. But watch this. I'm going to move the selection cursor close to the fill handle. And when it turns to a crosshair or Angry Rabbit, you click and drag. And check this out. You see the little screen tip? It's 21, 22, 23, 24. It's actually going to enter all those numbers for us. I'm going to go all the way to 40. And just like that, we have our X values. Now, I'd like to add some borders, so I'm going to go up to Home and the border all. Now, I'd like to create my formula here, the same formula we had up here. And I'm going to add some formatting. So I'm going to go up to Home. Actually, right-click. I'm going to uncollapse this so we can see this. I'm going to add a border. And then go to the drop-down. I'm going to use some color. I'm actually going to go to More Colors and select from the Standard tab this green. Click OK. That will work. That's got a fill and a border. Now, why do I always have a green wherever there's a formula? Because I like to differentiate from the actual numbers that are typed in and the numbers that the formulas deliver. So right here, we're going to create a formula. Now, we're going to have to learn the difference between relative and absolute cell references. Now, we're going to use the same equation up here, except for check this out. We want to put one formula in this cell and copy it down. Right here in cell B18, the x is 0. When I copy it down in this cell, the x is 1. Right here, the x is 2. But notice, every single one of our formulas is always going to have to look at the M and the B. That's where the relative and absolute. The relative, as I copy the formula down, the x is always going to be looking relative to me, the formula, one cell to my left. When I get the formula down here, it's going to have to look relative to me, the formula, one cell to my left. Formula, x is one cell to my left. But every one of these formulas has to be locked or absolutely always looking at the M in E6 and the B in E7. All right, let's click in B17 and do our formula. Equal sign starts every formula. M times x, so mx, plus rb. Now, right now, these cell references are relative. Let's just enter it in and copy it down. And what I mean by relative is when I copy the formula down one cell, those cell references, now I'm going to click in the cell one below, and I'm going to hit the F2 key to put it in edit mode. Now notice the x is perfect. If I'm the formula relative to me, I'm looking one cell to my left. But no way, these cell references are moving too. As I copy down one cell, they're always going to move down. So I need to come back to this original cell and change the formula to lock it on M and B. Escape. I'm going to hit delete. And now let's come back to the original cell, F2. All right, so A17 is fine. Let's take our cursor and touch the E6. And it doesn't matter if it's in front, in back, or in the middle of E6. We have to change this by hitting the F4 key. F4. Whoa, it puts dollar signs. Now, way back in the original first spreadsheet ever, they just randomly picked that character to mean now this cell reference is locked. The dollar sign has nothing to do with money or anything. It's just a symbol that says now that's an absolute cell reference. Notice no dollar signs there, so when I copy it down, it'll always look relative one cell to my left. Now, we also need to lock on E7. So what do? We hit the F4, and the dollar signs are put in. That formula, absolute times relative plus absolute, will work just fine. Enter. Now, I want to come back to this cell, and we're going to learn an awesome trick. Remember over here we highlighted two cells, and then we pointed to our fill handle when we saw an angry rabbit. We clicked and dragged. Well, I want you to notice something. If I'm scrolling down with the wheel on my mouse. Notice all of our x's go down to 40, and then it stops. There's nothing there. So here's an awesome trick for formulas. Instead of clicking with your angry rabbit and dragging, which we could do, all you have to do is double click. So I'm going to double click the fill handle with my angry rabbit. Double click, and instantly Excel knows to copy the formula down. Now I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom because I don't know until I look at the last one if it's actually correct. I'm going to click in the last cell and hit F2. You got to be kidding me. Do you realize how much time that saved me? If I had to calculate all this with a calculator, that's the beauty of Excel. We're using cell references and pointing to our inputs. Relative cell 1 to my left, but E6 and E7 were locked all the way down. Look at that. All right, now I'm going to click Escape. Beautiful. We saw how to calculate M, B, put in an X, calculate with our linear equation. Then we saw how to create a linear equation with absolute and relative cell references. Now we have one last topic. We do want to talk about R and R squared. So I'm going to scroll over here and click on the sheet 3 formula, R and R squared. Now we're going to start with coefficient of correlation, which is R. That tells us the strength and direction of the line. Now, if we get an R that's negative, we'll know that the relationship is inverse. If we get an R that's positive, we'll know that the relationship is positive. Now, just like slope and intercept, there are built-in functions to do the heavy lifting. Now, this is one of the weirdest calculations because for some reason, there's two functions. You can either use Pearson or CORREL. I'm going to use Pearson. That's named after the person who invented this statistical calculation. So pair, or PEA, there's a P, and then tab. Now remember we said earlier, some of the statistical functions say array 1 and array 2, but we're going to put the y's in first, comma, and then the x values. Close parentheses and enter. And this, of course, is negative because as in our plot, back over here we saw, sure enough, it is negative. Now, the thing about R is we can simply square it. So down here equals R caret, that's shift 6, and a 2. That will give us our coefficient of determination, or R squared, the goodness of fit of the actual data to the linear model. Now, you could do it that way, but guess what? There's also a function. So equals RS, and it's the only one, tab, R squared. And notice this one says known Y. So we go, so for all the statistical functions, and there's a bunch more, Y's first, and then our X's. Close parentheses, Control Enter. All right, that is a lot of awesome stuff. And isn't Excel amazing? It can calculate R squared, R. We can go ahead and calculate back here an M and a B and create an equation. We can even create a bunch of calculations if we know absolute and relative cell references. And then back here, we can do data entry and charting. All right, have fun with Excel and chemistry. We'll see you next video.